So, hey, Phil, thanks for joining. And it's great that we decided to have this discussion. Just for the purposes of those watching, Phil and myself are embarking on a partnership designed to specifically support the success of B2B revenue operations. We both are in agreement with our respective businesses that we see a great deal of opportunity to help what we think is a broken system. And we've come to understand that we both bring to the table a unique capability and area of expertise that are very complementary. So, I mean, I'll just start by letting everyone know that the chief revenue officer is the focus of the topic. In that, the CRO is someone whom we believe is an important cog in the wheel of helping a business today, B2B business today, function effectively, and that it's a broken model because the CROs don't have a large enough remit to do the job they're supposed to do.
I think, Warren, it's similar at our area of the business. So what we're finding now is that if this CRO strategy is implemented properly, and of course the remit is as broad as we both believe it should be around the revenue function, what that means really is the way in which you combine and you tie together the delivery services, the operational services, is also a broader and more intricate remit than it ever was before. And that's really where we're coming from as a business. We're trying to avoid just the simple silos of how our marketing and sales function do or don't in most cases interact properly, so that the CRO job being done properly, Warren, which is what you guys do, leads therefore to an execution operational part of what that CRO is responsible for, that is far more intricate and connected than it's ever been before. And that's really where we try and operate.
Great. I'm curious, I have a question for you. So where do you usually find, like when a customer agrees to work with you, what usually is the primary impetus for them to make the decision? Why is it? What are they trying to solve? What pain points are they usually facing that have them say, I want your help?
So I mean, it varies. I mean, we have two types of clients. So we have what I would call, startup scale-ups, companies that have been around for 5 or 10 years that probably have some pretty decent capability, but they just need to go more quickly. But they are absolutely driven by revenue growth and in immediate terms. And that's an area that we're able to connect potentially more than just the single function that they might be operating either in a media space or a CRM space, whatever it might be. We're able to connect those very quickly and help them scale. The other side of the equation for us is the more traditional businesses that are maybe 50 or 100 years old, who particularly bigger marketing organizations. They're under pressure to demonstrate their relevance to the business. Sometimes that means we want better performance in terms of MQLs, as basic as that. But increasingly, we need to demonstrate our value to the business. And that means we need to start proving the revenue impact that we have. And that's really where they'll typically come to us, because we'll talk to them about the fact that we can help to influence and measure your LTV, your ARR, all these types of activities. And it's a no-brainer that they want to talk about it. The problem might be moving forwards that the CRO position hasn't been filled correctly above that. So whilst maybe a discrete, intelligent marketeer at a growth level wants to do that, the rest of the business is possibly, and more often not at the moment, ready to execute in the same vein.
That makes sense. It's interesting because what you said there with the larger company, this sort of need for one segment of the business to justify, their value. This is a big issue is, when you see these siloed organizations, one of the problems is just that, is that these different subgroups are sort of fighting for their own relevance, right? And I want to be able to have someone help me measure, for example, marketing's contribution to outcomes, because no one knows it, right? I'm worried my budgets are going to be slashed, or I'm going to be demoted, or they're going to, because they always get rid of marketing budgets first, right? And the way that you just spoke about that is very telling, because one of the ways I think the problems start is by separating those organizations to begin with, right? So if you build a culture where you have these siloed revenue functions, naturally, each one of them are going to naturally get to a point where they're going to want to have more market share internally with the budgets and, the influence that they have. And that drives internal friction and internal, between the two. And it creates the problems that we're seeing. And I think we both agree that a leader who's properly appointed that understands how to coordinate these organizations from the beginning, it sort of helps to solve those problems because it builds a model where all these three organizations are sort of more dependent upon each other, and that becomes less of an issue.
Exactly. And, my ultimate dream is to sell the concept and help our clients build the teams or the digital revenue team. And of course, we're going to have people that have got digital marketing skills and selling skills and customer success skills. But, that's going to be, in my view, that'll be built from the top down. We have a revenue function, a digital revenue function. We're all one team. We don't have these sales and marketing silos. I mean, the sales and marketing alignment argument, I mean, for me, it's been going on for so long. I think it has proved to the world it's a failed experiment. It's not going to get any better anytime soon. So I'd like to see the CRO have the confidence to say, I'm building a digital revenue function from the top down. Of course, I'm going to want to pick people with sales skill and digital marketing skills and customer success skills, but I'm not going to call you that. And I'm not going to artificially position you in boxes within my organization like that. I'm going to position you in boxes or in swim lanes, whatever you want to call it, based upon maybe the stage or at which you interact with a customer or whatever it might be. But instead of organizing our businesses around what suits us internally, sales, marketing, customer success, I, the CRO, am going to start organizing my business or my functions around what makes most sense for the customer. And when I say it like that, it sounds so obvious. It sounds ridiculously obvious. These vertical segments around function, they're doing nothing for customer experience.
Agreed. I think the issue is there's a lot of issues here, but one is there's certainly a blueprint that's sort of been handed down for the last 20 years of how businesses are structured, and people just adopt them without really thinking about whether they're right. It's very difficult to get to that tabula rasa place with a CEO to look at his company like with fresh eyes and say, how would I structure this company if I didn't have the benefit of 20 years of all this modeling at me? Most of the companies probably wouldn't be structured the way they are today. I think people are sort of stuck with these models because they just seem to be what people do, right? And also because the software systems that people buy are designed to adhere to that type of a structure. So everything sort of supports this model that sort of is in a way broken. But I have a question for you about this. So I think there's a difference between mindset and application. So if someone is, for example, thinking about losing weight or going on a diet, there's definitely a regimen, right? There's a meal plan that someone can follow, like how many calories I have to eat and what types of foods and this kind of thing. And that's the practical aspect of it that people are much easier dealing with than the mind change they have to make, right? I mean, somebody has to actually become a different sort of thinker about food before they can adhere to that. And the problem with, I think, diets, and I think much like you and I are talking about, is people want to go right to the meal plan. And then they can't quite figure out why 3 months or not even 3 weeks later, they're eating cookies again. And it's because what they didn't do is they didn't get to the underlying issue as to why it is they want the cookies in the first place. And I think that this is a big problem today, is that customers are much more, I think they're actually easier supported to buy practical solutions than more, I'd say, mindset or strategic solutions, because they're difficult to define. Yeah. And what I'm trying to do, as you probably know, is my role in this whole sort of ecosystem is more on the mindset part, right? So I have a system and a process by which I help a CEO kind of understand the reason why the company's set up in the way you described and what drove that, what cultural, functional issues and organizational issues. And I know this because it works, is companies whom explore that part of it and make that mind shift have almost like a 90% greater chance of implementing the programs that you would bring to the table, because now they're actually ready to implement them. I'd like to talk a bit about that, because I think it's an important distinction to make between the importance of having both of those pillars part of the equation as opposed to just one, because my thing alone isn't enough. Just changing your mind is enough if you don't have some plan to work off, and having a plan without changing your mind is enough either. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I agree entirely with the requirement for both, because a lot of the plans and indeed activities and people we supply to those companies, their effectiveness can be hugely limited very, very quickly, as you say, if the other parts of the organization don't have the same mindset around what they're trying to achieve. So that's probably the main sort of barrier to us getting success with what we do is the mindset piece that, as I say, very rarely is that in the right place. I think that might differ a little in terms of maybe US business as opposed to European business. I think that the US businesses,
explain that. What do you mean? That's interesting. What do you mean by that?
Well,
what is
I think there are, so for example, and maybe we'll talk about the type of businesses in a minute, but there are more ground up built businesses, startup, scale up type companies that I think, whilst they might not be perfect, they have less legacy around a very old fashioned.
So in other words, they haven't built any bad habits yet, so to speak.
They've built fewer bad habits probably.
Okay.
And they've probably got a group of people that are so used to the change, because it just occurs all the time, that I think the chances of success seem to be somewhat high. And don't get me wrong, you have traditional old business in the US and the same in Europe, but I certainly feel that the Silicon Valley type businesses are certainly more up for a different approach. And I think maybe to address your question earlier, what we're also seeing is kind of related to this. We're seeing that there are sales-led businesses, maybe those older businesses that sell product. There's engineering-led businesses. There are marketing-led businesses. But the thing that we're seeing that is of, I think, the most exciting potential development next few years is this product-led growth, or PLG type businesses. These are the companies that put a different emphasis on sales, marketing, customer success. In fact, they don't put much emphasis on it at all. They put the emphasis on how freemium trial type engagements leads to longer term LTV, longer term sales growth. And that's the area that we're seeing potentially as the most exciting. And it's how I guess companies like yours, Warren, help a CRO execute or indeed change their behavior around that. And companies like ours stop focusing on maybe MQLs or LTV, and instead we start focusing on freemium or adoption rates, things like this. And it's those types of businesses that we're certainly seeing as potentially the best opportunity for us. And I think we've got the best opportunity to give them that type of. I don't know, how do you feel about the PLG thing?
It's a great point. It's a great point. I'm thinking about that because I do agree with that. I think that, if you look at the really successful companies today, the ones that seem to have this stickiness, they're basically built by company founders who are engineers or product people, right? Who come up with a great idea and a great product. And they may not have a great deal of commercial capabilities or competencies, but they really do understand customer experiences, and they understand the product and how it's consumed and how the value is extracted by the customer.
Exactly.
And as long as that leader is in the focus and is really focused on that customer, if he could build a commercial organization around him or her, it could be a very successful organization. And
exactly,
I think I agree. And here's the thing, right? It's an interesting thing you're saying, because my clients, right, I get lucky. I find some of these people sometimes that are more like just naturally amenable to this sort of thing. But to your point, most of them aren't, right? Most of them are, VC driven, like they put in a CEO who's a business guy, came out of like some, VC stack, or he came from a business school. And it's not to put someone like that down, but they tend to think a lot more about, revenue and customer acquisition, right? So, which is intuitive. However, we all know that any business that focuses on customer outcomes as the core philosophy of the business is likely going to succeed more, because all the things that you and I are talking about, whether it be pipeline growth or LTV, it's all predicated on a happy customer. This is
exactly that.
This is like a no-brainer, but it's amazing how far away a company can drift from that reality after they start building up these complicated systems. So my question is, can you transform a commercially led or a sales-led organization into a product-led organization? Is there a way to get that thinking infused into a company so they can start looking at the customer as the key metric as opposed to like their own metrics?
So I'd lie if I said I had the blueprint to that, because we work with companies that are 100 years old and have got they have compensation methods for salespeople that are as old as the hills, and that marketing has a position at the table and it's not as important, and then there's a business unit that invests a percentage of its P&L in creating more hardware products. So I think it is incredibly difficult. One of the ways we're trying to do this right now is to get our customers engaged in a principle or a philosophy that we're calling the forever customer. So it's starting. Yes, of course, there's the LTV element to that, but what we're trying to do is say to be it marketing leaders or sales leaders or customer success people, we're trying to say, look, if you have a new philosophy around what you're trying to do, i.e., you're trying to keep the customer forever, but along with that comes a whole load of thought processes and styles that say, hang on a minute, if we're trying to relate this to the forever customer, why are we only worried about MQL? Why are we only worried about close one? We should be worried about LTV, ARR, adoption rates. And my point is, if the forever customer as a concept and a philosophy is something that everyone buys into, and who wouldn't buy into that as a philosophy, then all of a sudden, I think you've got a catalyst to get the company mindset thinking in an emotional way about why you should try and make your customers be with you forever. Now, some people say, well, hang on a minute, that's impossible. So we often say the pursuit of the forever customer.
Of course, it's a
but as a philosophy, that's what we're trying to get 100-year-old American companies or Japanese companies or European companies to say, yeah, that is what we need. We're going to compete with some of these startup businesses that are PLG type businesses from scratch. We're going to have to apply some of the philosophies, and maybe the forever customer is the philosophical element that ties it together. So maybe that sounds a bit wishy-washy, but as I say,
I agree with you. I think it's a great framework, and what I see really are two things here at work, in my opinion, right? From at least what I'm trying to do is the outcomes I'm trying to produce in coordination with what you just said, which I think is great, is I want to get the company to have generally a new awareness.
Yeah.
I want to change or disrupt their thinking, because most companies, I know we both know this, they're so myopic and they're so focused on their own way of doing things. They've lost any ability to see their whole paradigm in any objective way. So what I'm trying to do first is disrupt their thinking by having them have become aware of things in a way that they haven't before. And then with that awareness, there becomes an opportunity to then change where their focus is, right? It's the context. So, okay, so now that you know this, it can be really jarring, the process that I utilize is that, okay, with this awareness, where is the opportunity now to input a different focus area? Right now, your focus, Mr. CEO, commercial sales-led CEO, is you're very focused right now on pipeline growth and profitability. Which, look, any business person says, well, why wouldn't I be focused on profitability? I'm not understanding why this is, but it may seem counterintuitive. But to your point, if the focus is put on the customer experience and how the value is extracted and how the customer is happy and the product is delivering on the needs, those things do work themselves out. And it's just very, very difficult for companies that are on that other track to switch gears. And mainly I see is because it's not a closed system. It's not just like I'm just talking to a business. I'm actually talking to the investors in that business. Yeah. And this is another whole aspect of this, is that one of the reasons I'm seeing, and I think everyone would agree, but maybe is not spoken about enough, is the VC community or the investment community is an unwitting sort of, enabler of a lot of this thinking, because when companies take on funding, it comes with expectations and it comes with conditions. And those conditions are driven by the need to have to get that money back in the form of growth, right? And that's going to change what you and I just discussed, which is the context and the focus. It becomes off the customer. And now it's more on getting that money returned in ways that are counterintuitive to the way customers want to buy things. So how do you disrupt that? Like, what do you think the right way is to go to a CEO who's focused mainly on his board and the money he just got, or the new round he's trying to pursue, as opposed to taking his focus off that and focusing on the customer? What's your thought about that?
Well, I guess, as you're talking there, it made me think really, you do hear a lot now about this job title, the Chief Customer Officer. Mm-hmm. And of course, you and I speak a lot about the Chief Revenue Officer. I do wonder if those in the future might be one and the same thing, albeit just from a different angle. Again, obviously these CEOs, as you say, they're clever guys. They've been they've been put in a position because they've affected growth in the past before. I guess one of the things we try and do is start talking to them about the way time multiplies in relation to a subscription. I know it's obvious stuff, but if we start doing that and we start talking about $0 deals, so we've got a number of clients where the marketing team spend a huge amount of money creating MQLs that the salespeople do or don't want. And then they spend a huge amount of time selling and entertaining, etc., to then close the deal from the procurement department for that service to potentially be unused by the people in the business. Classic example is in the business travel space. You can often have a situation where people are buying the enabling software to allow you to book and coordinate all your activity. But if you don't use it as the user, the revenue model is only based upon the margin on the activity bought. So we start to talk to our guys about the $0 deal and how much effort you could and do make to close a $0 deal. And what about if you just took some of that effort and worried, therefore, not necessarily about buyer personas, but start talking or incorporating into your mindset user personas, and how $0 deal becomes monthly recurring revenue from more people buying more service in your organization, and all of a sudden you get a multiplier coming in. So again, this isn't rocket science, and any CEO worth his weight is already understanding those concepts. But so we certainly find it helpful to say you understand those concepts, yet your effort is marketing for an MQL, sales for a close one, and the amount you spend beyond close one, how much is it, Mr. CEO? It's not that much, and that's where we're trying to illustrate, highlight that where maybe that change of focus might be. And the CRO is the only person that can do that, in my view. The person that can say, yeah, of course we need net new, and so yes, we will invest in marketing, but maybe we don't need to invest quite so much in marketing, and maybe we can strip out some of our sales capability and put it post sale, and that's the sort of thing that the conversations we're having, I think people are certainly buying into the concepts of, but whether or not they're prepared to half the sales force and take 50% off the marketing budget, I'm not sure yet, but that's I think where we're heading.
Yeah, agreed. And the receptivity is been overwhelming to this concept, no question. I'm not
totally.
It's really overwhelming. It's, to your point though, it's putting money where their mouth is, so to speak, is hard, because I think once a CEO thinks not even too deeply, but just even superficially about the implications of what you and I are talking about, they recognize like how much of a knot they're going to have to undo. And it's the difference between the CEO who's, in my opinion, like a real visionary, is one who says, you know what, this is something we have to do, and I'm doing it, and I'm going to take all the hits and risks that are associated with it, because on the other side of this is going to be a much better option. The other ones are ones who just say, look, you know what, great idea, you guys are right, but I'm just not ready to do this right now, because I'm not going to muck things up. Other factors are more important to me, like my own job security or whatever. And I think we're trying to find the right people who kind of have the sort of personality and leadership type and resources to make a decision like this. So about the CRO, right? So, you obviously, I agree with you, right? The CRO is uniquely positioned to solve this issue internally. But as I've noted, and the reason why I even started this business is CROs are just not being hired properly or trained properly. So most of them are running sales only. They're actually unwittingly part of the problem you and I are talking about, right? So if I bring a CRO in and only he's running sales, he's sort of been used in a way as a mechanism to push some of the things that you and I are both talking about don't work. So what I'm trying to do is use the CRO as the focal point to get the company to change the remit of one leader that then in fact forces a change in culture that allows for the opportunity for the kind of things that you and I are working on. What would you say to a CEO today that they should be thinking about right now as they prepare and they're listening to this conversation, they're asking themselves questions that they can do that would help them to start to think more about how this makes sense for them, or things they can do to help mitigate some of this stuff?
I think, just to repeat my earlier point, I think to ask them how much effort is going into closing a close one deal, how much marketing effort, how much sales effort. Now, obviously, it depends upon their business model as to how much they sell that is a $0 deal, because not a lot of businesses it isn't. It's capital equipment, job's done, fantastic, move on. So I think it will vary based upon the service or product model that the company has. But as you say, we're seeing people that are very interested conceptually in what we're talking about, but actually getting them to go all in, I think, as you described, that is very, very challenging. And again, without wishing to repeat myself, that the reason we believe the pursuit of the forever customer philosophy is helpful, I'm not saying it solves the problem, but it does allow people within the CISO organization a good few levels down to buy into a concept that they all believe in, and that to me is a useful catalyst to get things going. And this, I think, Warren, is where your approach in terms of CRO ready organization can be helped by the type of activity we're talking about. But, I think we both agree for a while on this call, top down or bottom up is incredibly difficult to deliver. And I think the CEO right now, our job is to present to them the potential problems they're having or the pain they're experiencing with not really meeting the growth targets that they felt they should have done. And certainly from a marketing perspective, we find it reasonably easy to demonstrate, why MQL growth, for example, or contribution to pipeline was always a little bit behind where it should have been, and that's the catalyst that says, well, hang on a minute, that's because the model's changed, the world's different. You've got all these sales guys, for example, trying to be on the road. Well, that's not really how it works anymore. Yeah, sure, you need some of them, but you need to be reassessing that in relation to the current scenario. And I guess that brings me on to the pandemic piece. It's, it has been a catalyst that has accelerated digital anything. And certainly product-led growth is about digital consumption. We believe that the CRO's impact over digital sales, digital marketing, digital customer success is now more relevant because of the digital nature. Whereas before it was a sales leader in a sales office with sales guys and marketing doing something else. The connections, the intrinsic connection between across a whole acquisition and sales and long-term value process, that the inherent connections through digital mean that we're all of a sudden sharing the same piece of information about a customer. So I think it's highlighting those things to the CEO, and they're all obvious, but it's a question of, okay, well, when are you going to jump? When are you going to start doing some more of these activities?
I got it. And on the heels of that, what I usually tell a CEO or someone who's thinking about this stuff is, do you have a chief revenue officer already hired? And if so, what is the primary focus and remit of that CRO? And if the answer is sales, next question I'd have you ask yourself is why? What drove the decision to have that chief revenue officer be sales focused? Like what were the real triggers that had you want to bring in a chief revenue officer to run sales? Given the idea, the concept, or the awareness that a chief revenue officer who runs an entire revenue operation that includes all revenue functions would bring greater alignment. What had you make this decision, and what is it benefiting you, and how is it costing you? What are the ways in which your current organization is misaligned? What is the relationship that your marketing team has with your sales team? What is the relationship that the customer success organization has with the way in which sales hands it off to them? Who oversees these things? How are they being managed? And is the information from sales, marketing, customer success being utilized? And the last question I ask you is, how much focus does your company currently have right now on the customer? When you think about your culture of the company, where is your attention mostly? Is it on internal issues, or is it on customer outcomes? And again, these are sort of difficult things to think about, but if a CEO can honestly answer that, we spend a lot more time thinking about our own problems than our customers' problems, I think you probably could see that there's probably going to be an issue there that'll reflect in the way customer value is and customer lifetime value is. So these are the ways I usually kind of get people to start thinking about this stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, so to kind of wrap this up, again, just to the purposes of this is, and I'm excited about this. I think, we have really wonderfully complementary businesses, and I'm looking forward to the opportunities for us to kind of collaborate on things. And again, the CRO Collective is designed specifically to train CROs and aspiring CROs, and also help CEOs build revenue operations that are aligned through the successful appointment of CROs. And, Phil, give a little blurb about your business, and then, we can kind of sign off, and hopefully some people will then reach out to us and see if we can have some engagements with people about some different these topics with customers.
Yeah, certainly. So my business was originally a digital marketing business. We've always believed in connecting multiple elements of buyer journeys together. The thing that's changed for us over the last 2 or 3 years is that, we've stopped talking about MQL, we've stopped talking about close one, and we've started to move everyone in the business's mindset around the idea of recurring revenue, the idea of getting someone into a product, into a demo, and then focusing on how we make more of that engagement, how we make it last longer. And that's really where we've come up with this idea of the pursuit of the forever customer. It's taking all of the things that our people have always done. You know, we've got media specialists, we've got content creators, we've got data people, we've got analytics people. All of those functions are absolutely relevant to the idea of using your resources in a digital environment beyond the point of sale. And as I say, for a lot of companies, a lot of marketing businesses at least, you know, it was, yeah, let's do some customer comms, you know, let's do a regular monthly email or whatever it might be. For us now, it's much more about how do we create the channels within the apps, for example, and how do we construct the communications around data, around behavior, and how do we feed those communications to the individual? So, you know, we're very much interested in the connecting of product data to sales, marketing, and customer success actions and reactions. And again, it's a hugely exciting part of the business because of the data piece. And really, as I say, we're a good position to execute on this because we're also pretty good at understanding the channels, be they media channels or whatever they might be, and increasing these new types of in-app type channels too. So yeah, that's the excitement for us. And to say, the reason we're keen to work with you, Warren, is because we firmly believe that the top-down, bottom-up approach is the fastest way to make this happen. You know, I can't see a time in 10 years where this isn't, you know, mostly how businesses operate. I might be being over optimistic there, but
no, I agree.
We believe, and we're trying to push the digital revenue team. We want to remove the language of sales and marketing, customer success. We want to stop trying to you know, reduce these silos of things that have been at war for years. Right? We need to start again. We need to talk digital revenue team, and the CRO needs to be responsible for building that from the ground up. It doesn't mean that salesmen, marketers, and customer success guys haven't got any jobs anymore. It just means they're doing their job in a different way, aimed at customers, not segmented by department. But
100%. I agree. I think this is definitely where things are headed, and I think we're onto something. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to do some stuff with you. And thanks.
Thank you.